Question 3. What have you learnt from your audience feedback? Audience has been one of the most important considerations for me and my group to take into account throughout the production, planning and editing stages of our project. To make sure we always had our audience's interests in mind, we held various focus groups and rough cut screenings throughout our entire making of the project. The initial focus group revealed that people were most scared of horror movies that included a psychological element, because it got them thinking about how they would react in that situation, and when they related themselves to that situation, it kind of stuck with them in their mind and kind of scared them even more. Another thing that we found was that people felt uncomfortable with the idea of having a feeling that someone's watching you, so we wanted to include that in our movie as well. We did this through close-ups of eyes looking through keyholes and aerial view shots or bird's eye view shots of victims to make them look small and as if they're being watched. In the rough cut screenings, our audience was very helpful, giving constructive feedback all the way through. Firstly suggesting a change in the order of our trailer because originally it was in chronological order. Some members of our audience also suggested that the trailer would be better suited to a horror genre if there was more jump cuts and more bad EVA scenes put together, and they suggested it would be good if they would put in like a montage. Another suggestion from the older representatives of our audience was to have a lead up to the final scare, as well as using more than one single score for sound, which is what we'd done originally. After this point was made, there seemed to be quite a few comments about how the sound didn't quite fit. It made it look more like a drama or a thriller than an actual horror movie that was to do with psychological horror. As one of the main editors for the trailer, I was able to ensure that more jump cuts were put in and scares were included and positioned in a way that kind of like built up slowly, but not too slowly, to the final scare. My preferred reading as director of the project was that the story would be about a young girl who's in college and she has a mental illness called dissociative identity disorder. So she goes to a party with her friends and this kind of triggers her to have an episode, and then there would be lots of deaths because her alter was the one taking over her body and making her commit these murders. The initial rough cut was shown to the audience sample, and I asked them what they thought the narrative or the storyline for the trailer was. They didn't quite get that it was mental illness. No one actually mentioned that it could have been some kind of psychological problem, so I kind of decided that this was something that needed to be changed or made clearer through editing some more scenes into it. To do this, we decided as a group to add in the scene where Eva is seen taking her medication, and after this was shown to the audience, it helped them realise that it was psychological horror and it was about mental issues or some kind of form of mental illness. Another point our audience raised was the fact that it didn't really feel like a horror movie. There was a lack of violent or even suggested violent scenes. So my group and I decided to include a severed arm and a reference to the Crazies trailer where there's a knife being dragged along a wall. The preferred reading was much clearer after this. A favourite of our audience samples in general seemed to be the Who scene, where Eva's seen in a cold, grey kind of setting and her friend calls out her name but she doesn't recognise her name. There's a puff of cold air from her mouth as she says Who, and this kind of makes the setting even more uneasy. Another favourite scene was the corridor scene that I edited, where Eva jump cuts down a white corridor. The audience told me that the contrasting colours of black in her costume as well as the white of the rest of the scene kind of made them feel uneasy because it was so different. Eva moved as the lights turned off, and as it's a jumpy, disturbing scene, due to the light contrasts, this was one of the reasons it was a favourite for the audience sample. Overall, from my audience, I learned that it's not all about the people that make the trailers or movies, it's about what the audience want. And asking what the audience wants is most of the time quite helpful to do because it ties in together all the ideas we had as a group and made them fit better.